Hi villagers, it's October, so let's start our Christmas cake. It's a long process. This day you need to weigh out all your ingredients and leave it to soak overnight. So make sure you plan enough time to do all of these sections. Get a nice big bowl, bigger than you think, and 225 grams of currants, same of sultanas and same of raisins. Or cheat and use a bag of mixed up dried fruit. In it goes. It always gets a bit stuck, I find, so you have to give it a bit of a wiggle. So in it goes, all of it. Add it all in together. See, stuck. You can soak it in brandy. The recipe I have originally is Adelia Smith, the queen of Christmas cooking, but I'm not a brandy drinker and I find I get much better results, nice moist cake, from using orange juice. I have done for several years now. Add 150 grams or a pot if you have a cherry lover in your house, and cut them up with scissors. If you've watched my cherry and coconut cake recipe, you'll see that I've only recently started doing cutting scissors cherry action, because you don't end up sticky then. I don't know how it's taken me to be 46 and not know these things, but anyway. And 150 grams of candied peel, or in this case, however big that pot actually is. And just chuck it in. Nice big blob. And then 100 ml of brandy or orange juice, whichever you're using, and slosh it in. And then with a nice big spoon, give it a mix. You don't need the scales anymore, so that can go away. And you need a nice big spoon, give it a nice big stir. Mix and leave overnight to absorb all that orange juice or brandy. I have a big platter in the same Denby ware that the bowl is, and it fits quite nicely over the top to keep out any wee beasties that might crawl around in the middle of the night. Come back the next day to actually make the cake. Good night. Day 2, making the actual cake. It has a really long cooking time, so make sure you give yourself plenty of time. In a different bowl, we're going to weigh out the cake bit. 300 grams of butter, which in the UK isn't quite enough in one pat. They are 250 grams, so you always need to make sure you've got another one as well. So that one goes straight in as it is, and then we'll have to weigh out some more. And then 300 grams of brown sugar. What you didn't see me do was cut the butter inside that bowl after I'd weighed it in, just so that it's easier to mix together. Pour in the brown sugar. So that bag's 500 grams, so we don't need all of that. I always end up with sticky fingers, which is why wearing a pinny is quite good, because you can just rub your fingers. Here I am cutting up the butter. And then we're going to smush it together. So we are creaming the butter and the sugar together. As you can see, Charlotte's in the background, parallel baking. And this is what it looks like when you've creamed it all together. It's not overly attractive at this stage, but never mind. We're going to take 1 orange and 1 lemon. We only need the zest. Find something else to do with the actual orange bits. So my grater has a narrow gauge section. And you go all the way around the lemon and then all the way around the orange. Don't get the white pithy bits. That's what it looks like when you've finished. What I actually did with these was slice them and put them in the oven and dried them out. There you go, see all that zest on the back. Scrape it off. It smells beautiful at this point. But it's tiny little bits, and getting them off that scraper thing is a bit of a pest. Now mix it all together. Oh yes, release all the smells. Yum. Charlotte's making red velvet cake in the background, and that smells really nice too. What's next? Oh, 5 eggs. Just crack them straight into the bowl, I find. No messing about. You won't see me do them all. I didn't think that made very good filming. So there we go. That's the 5th egg. And off to the compost the shells go. Wipe the hands because we're a bit eggy now. And are we mixing? Or are we going straight for flour? Oh, we're going straight for flour. So this is plain flour, 350 grams exactly. Or if you've seen any of my cooking things before, thereabouts will do. It all comes together in the end. Right, don't need that anymore, that can go away. And a teaspoon of mixed spice. That's the bit that makes it smell like Christmas, I think. But as you can see, we're not measuring, we're just having a good guess at it. And now we're going to mix it all together. Oh, here you go. Quick overview. That's what it looks like at the moment. Not very Christmas cake-like, is it? And here we mix it all together. It's really not going to look very nice, but it smells beautiful. Especially with that mixed spice in there. Where have I gone now? Oh, here we go. So that's what it looks like. That's the actual cake bit. Now we need to pour the fruit back in. Charlotte came and waved at the camera when I wasn't looking. And now we've got to try and work out how to get this giant bowl of fruit into the giant bowl of cake mix without any catastrophes. Right, give it a stir. Make sure we've used up all of that orange juice or brandy. Because that would be a shame, wouldn't it, to lose some of that. And here we go. It really is quite a lot of cake mix, so please make sure you have appropriate sized bowls before you start. Charlotte's baking had to be transferred between bowls because she hadn't quite allowed enough room. So that was a bit of a hold your breath and pour kind of situation. Right, there we go, that bowl can now go away. And now comes the monumental task of trying to mix it all together. In our house, it's a family activity. I think traditionally speaking, Christmas cake is meant to have a wish attached to a stir, and therefore everybody gets to have a stir because then you get to have a wish. I have no idea where that comes from, but these things tend to have a root somewhere. So get your spatula in right down to the bottom, make sure it's all mixed in and none of it jumps out the bowl. As you can see, it's quite a good arm workout. No need for the gym today. Right, who else can we have? Oh yes, here we go. Charlotte's come to have her good luck stir. Yep, it's hard going, isn't it? I half expected some of that to fly out then. So while we're waiting for Nick to appear, I started double lining the cake tin with baking parchment. And as it turns out, I had less than I thought I did, so I had to make it go where I wanted it to go. So put the first one in, conform it to your will, or the baking tray or the cake tin, and then once you're fairly happy with it, lay the other one the other way and bend that to your will. Right, here's Nick for his good luck wish. Oh, he makes that look easier than Charlotte did. Right, back to this cake tin. So we've got the first layer in one way as a rectangle piece of paper, and then turn the other one 90 degrees the other way so that you've got a good amount. There we go, that's 90 degrees. Tamsin, put it in properly so that you've got a good amount of paper sticking out the top. This serves two purposes. It protects your cake from burning, and also it helps to lever the cake out afterwards because you have something to grip onto. It's not very good at conforming to your will, but you get there in the end. Normally as soon as you start pouring the mixture in, it starts behaving itself. So here we go, we have to pour the mixture in without catastrophe. As you can see, it's quite thick, so it's not a case of pouring it in so much as blobbing it in. Catch that bit? There we go. So you can make the paper behave by sticking it down with the cake mix. This cake mix is slightly too much for my cake tin. Some years I make two cakes, one slightly smaller than the other. One year I didn't make a cake at all and I just made muffin size ones. But then they're far too easy to eat when they're only muffin size. So try and even it out a little bit. You don't want to smooth it flat by any means, but just sort of even it out a bit. And there's about this much left. Here we have my muffin tin. It's silicone. That's the cake. I think it is 20 centimetres in diameter. So we're going to make little cakes with the leftover mixture. It's a useful way of being able to use up the last of the mixture. Have something to test to make sure your Christmas cake mixture is good. There we go, 3 muffin size ones. And here they are in the oven, looking lovely. So the muffins took about an hour, the cake took about an hour and a half, but do test it with a skewer to make sure it comes out clean. Please don't panic. This was several hours later when it was cold. Beautiful, look at the colour on that. Fold it up, put it away, come back another day to marzipan and ice.
Collect your cake.
See you next month when we do that.
Sit it in the middle of the board where you want it to go when it's fully iced. You'll need a spoon and a pastry brush. One side is flat from the base. Obviously this is now the correct way up, and it's a bit wriggly, which you will see the problems associated with that later on. This is because of the paper. If we'd used a flat cake tin with a flat side, it wouldn't be like that. So you'll need a jar of apricot jam. It's always apricot because I think it's because it doesn't taste of anything and won't interfere with the icing. And I've got 2 packs of marzipan, but actually as it turns out we only need 1. So put your pinny on, get a little ramekin dish that you will be able to put in the microwave or heat it in a pan if you don't have a microwave. So this is effectively to glue the marzipan to the cake. Be generous with your jam. Yeah, and we'll put another one in as well. In it goes. So microwave in small doses. So the first one is 20 seconds. and it still came out a little bit gloopy. Always remember to take your spoon out. You don't want to set fire to the house. And after 20 seconds, it hadn't really loosened up enough, so we're going to put it back in. So altogether it had 40 seconds. So give it a bit of a stir in between. Don't leave the spoon in, and pop it back. So here's its 20 seconds for the second time. And as you can see, when it came back, it looked like this. Proper thick, thin and gloopy, and really hot. Be careful you don't burn your fingers. And we will use the pastry brush to spread it all over the cake, in all of those little cracks and vents and all the places where the paper went and made the cake a slightly funny shape. Be generous with your jam. If necessary, make some more. But it would appear I guessed correctly today. So that can go in the washing up, and we are then going to spread it all over the cake. So remember, it's red hot. You don't want to burn your fingers. So you can see it's sort of making a glaze there, making it shiny. And then put your cake to one side while we roll out the marzipan. You will need icing sugar. Remember, this is something you don't want to put flour on the worktop for, because it'll make your marzipan taste funny. So we want icing sugar, and then just treat it like bread dough or pastry. As you can see, golden marzipan is exactly that, sunshine yellow. And it's a great big wedge, and we're going to get it nice and thin, and ideally a uniform shape so that we can drape it over the cake. Make sure you ice your rolling pin as well so that it doesn't stick. And my tip here is to turn it often. Make sure the icing sugar is a good coating over it so that nothing sticks. And turn it over as well regularly. Otherwise you'll end up with a funny shape. So we want a nice thin layer, big enough to go over the cake, and then cut off the edges. We don't really want to have to try and force it to fit the cake. We want it to be generous with it. So very gently, so that it doesn't break. Now's not the time for it to break, that would be awful. Drape it over like a warm blanket, and then push down on the sides so that it sticks to your nice apricot jam glue, including the top. Make sure the top's firmly fixed. We don't want any air bubbles and stuff. And then with a sharp knife, we're just going to trim away the edge of the marzipan, like so. Cut small little bits. Don't try and take away too much at once, because we don't want to lose anything that should be around the cake. Press down, make sure it all snug tight's in there. And then cover up and come back and ice in a week or two. Welcome back to December, the time to ice your cake. Today we are making royal icing, in part because I don't like the taste of fondant icing. I think it's horrible, but you do you. We are going to tie our hair up. Got a pinny on already, and then we will make some royal icing according to the Biro recipe cookbook I learned to cook with as a child. I have a modern interpretation of it. You will need all sorts of things for this: a spoon, a whisk, a bowl, a scales, lots of eggs, and a second vessel to put the egg yolks in, because we don't need those today, but you will want to save them and use them for something else.
So the first job is to separate the eggs. We need 5 egg whites for this exercise, but you can freeze egg yolks, so do save them for another recipe. So 5 egg whites. I have put a little jug hanging on the inside of the bowl, just here, as you can see, and that's what I'm going to plop my egg yolks into to save, hopefully, 5 eggs, no mess, and no egg yolks in the egg whites, because that will not help matters. The easiest way I find is to pour the yolk from one side of the shell to the other and release the white, hopefully without leaving any egg yolk, into the big bowl, and then when all the white is used, plop the yolk into the little jug we've hung on the inside of the bowl. I'm not going to show you doing this with 5 eggs. We will magically now have 5 eggs in the little jug and 5 egg whites in the bowl. There we go. No messing about. It's a bit wet, so we wipe it on the apron and put it to one side. Don't need the scales anymore. Give it a quick whisk, just to loosen it up. If you like your icing not very hard, you will need to invest in a tiny bottle of glycerin. But if, like me, you like your icing tooth-breakingly hard, lemon juice. About the same of either, depending on which you're doing. You don't need both. So we are doing 10 millilitres or 2 teaspoons. Give it a bit more of a whisk. Beat that lemon juice in. And then for 5 eggs, we will need a kilo of icing sugar. Conveniently, I now don't need the scales at all because we're using this entire box. But the end result was slightly too thin, and we really could have done with a bit more icing sugar, and actually twice as much icing as we need. I'll show you in another video what I did with it. The spare, bit runny, need more icing sugar. So in more goes. We go until we finish this box. Saves having to mess about with weighing stuff. It's going to get very, very difficult. You will not need to go to the gym for an arm workout this week. Yep, get it all out and that can go away. So whisking it at this stage is really hard because it's very full and thick. Get reinforcements. Can you see how thick that is? You're basically looking for it to stand up in stiff peaks, similar to meringue. I have a plethora of tools for this job. We're trying to get it all out of the bowl, but it is actually too thin for this job, really. So what I did in the end was do one layer and leave it a bit, and with the remainder of the icing I split that into half and put more icing sugar in one half and covered the cake with it again, and the other half I made little sweets. I put almond essence in. You could use peppermint or any other flavour that you like for that matter, and then just blobbed it onto baking parchment and leave to dry. You will need to turn them over so that they dry both ways. As you can see, this icing is quite clearly too runny for this job. So what I did was put it on, frantically panicked to try and keep it on, and then give up and come back once it started drying. Here's the end result. Enjoy.